verse by verse. And I've got notes on every little thing. And I may be off a little bit with my notes and go back and forth, but just bear with me. But here goes. And I will be asking for some people to read. Last year I gave you out the various ones, and I didn't do that this year because I didn't think I was going to have that many passages. But then you start studying, and today I actually added a bunch more to it. And so I will ask some of you to read. I know we have some that like to read, but if you don't like to read, you don't have to. But if you want to read, just jump right on in. I will read the first 3 words. In the beginning. Is there another passage in the Bible that has the exact same 3 words? If so, tell me which one. Wow, I thought there'd be all kinds of people jumping at this. Nobody? That person's saying. I don't know what they said. John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The exact same 3 words, in the beginning. What does that say? What does that tell us? Somebody said something.
So there was the beginning.
Okay. What does the beginning mean?
Start.
Start of what?
Time.
Time of life, time of creation.
Yeah. We're going to study that just in a minute. Let's go back just a couple other things before we get that far. Who is God? Is that a simple answer?
The Creator.
Simple enough for us, isn't it? Has anybody's got faith? Simple enough. Would anybody like to turn to Job chapter 38? Well, let me say, first of all, Psalm 14:1 says, the fool has said there is no God. But I'm pretty sure everybody, I'm positive, everybody in this room believes in a God, right? And we may have, like I say, we may have some misunderstandings or whatever on Job, not Job, but Genesis, the first part. But what is Job 38, 1 through 12 say? Anybody would want to read that?
Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, who is this who darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Now prepare yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? To what were its foundations fastened? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy? Or who shut in the sea with the doors when it burst forth and issued from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and thick darkness its swaddling band? When I fixed my limits for it and set bars and doors? When I said, this far you may come, but no farther. And here your proud waves must stop. Have you commanded the morning since your days began, and caused the dawn to know its place?
What does those verses say? What is it telling you? If you were to read, maybe you're familiar with those.
God's in charge of it all.
Charge of it all. Now, if you know, and we're not going to go into Job, obviously, but Job was trying to question God. That's what he said. Who is this who darkens counsel by words without knowledge? And then if you read the whole chapter and all of the other parts of 39, he's aggravated with Job for asking these kind of questions. Who are you to question me? He's saying. Now, he doesn't do it in that way, but, But let's, and Rose, if you'd like to jump on down to 18 and 19.
Have you comprehended the breadth of the earth? Tell me if you know all this. Where is the way to the dwelling of light? And darkness, where is its place?
Now try to remember 18 and 19 in reference to the light, because when we go back to Genesis 1:1, we're going to ask some questions about the light. And then you're on a roll, might as well go for some more, Rose. Number 24. Verse 24.
By what way is light diffused, or the east wind scattered over the earth?
Okay, who would want to read 33 through 37?
Do you know the ordinances of the heavens? Can you set their dominion over the earth? Can you lift up your voice to the clouds, that an abundance of water may cover you? Can you send out lightnings, that they may go and say to you, Here we are? Who has put wisdom in the mind, or who has given understanding to the heart? Who can number the clouds by wisdom, or who can pour out the bottles of heaven?
Now, these chapters, if you read the whole chapter, there's tons of verses like that. But it's all pointing to God, isn't it? As Chris pointed out. It's all pointing to who God is. We might not even have a definition of God, but we know who God is. And it goes back to the Genesis account. But let's look at a couple more. Isaiah 45:18. Whoever gets there first. Isaiah 45:18.
For thus says the Lord, who created the heavens, who is God, who formed the earth and made it, who has established it, who did not create it in vain, who formed it to be inhabited. I am the Lord, and there is no other.
Now, people will question this. And sometimes we might even question certain things. But a lot of times, well, they know a lot of times, it's all the time, we do not know more than God. In the book of Isaiah 55, just a couple chapters over, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways, says the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than yours. And my thoughts than yours. So we can see that God is, he's just God. Just incredible that he has knowledge that we just can't even think about. And so when we think of creation, and we just read these verses and talks about heavens and earth and things like that, sounds pretty straightforward. But when you get really deep into it, it's not as straightforward. Again, that's why some people, they don't understand Isaiah 55, 8, and 9. They just think they know more than God. Well, God, you really didn't say this, so we're going to say what we think you said. But we're going to get into it and try to look at it. But I'd like to read a couple more passages. Hebrews 11, 1 and 3. Hebrews 11, 1 and 3. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Then drop down to verse 3. By faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen were not made of things which are visible. Now, how does that apply? And again, I'm going to get off just a little bit. I'm not trying to get into evolution tonight. But I want to just mention this, and if we talk about it, if you bring it up, we will discuss it. But that's not my goal. But if you read that Hebrew 11:3 passage, how would that apply to the evolutionist? What does somebody who believes in evolution have to have? You have to have something to matter. You have to call it matter. We call it matter. You have to have matter to start with. For it to explode, you have to have something to start with. What does verse 3 say? Nothing. Can't make nothing from nothing, can you? Am I missing it?
They were not made of things which are visible.
Yeah. I mean, we can't, and again, we were not there, but there was nothing. God made it from nothing. The evolutionists, not all evolutionists believe this, but most believe that it started from something that had the Big Bang theory to it. You know, and Gary and I talked about, if you even want to look at it from a Big Bang standpoint, there was a Big Bang. God said that there be light and all this stuff. There was a Big Bang, but it was from God, not just from something happening to some tiny particle or whatever. So we talked about a starting point, and then God is infinity. God is eternal. So there is no starting point with God, but there is a starting point with heaven and earth and so on and so forth. Now, I'd like to ask 3 people to read 1 through 10, 11 through 20, and then 21 through 31. Whoever wants to jump in.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void. Darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. God called the light day, the darkness he called night. So the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." Thus God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. So the evening and the morning were the second day. And God said, "Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place. Let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good.
11 through 20.
Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the earth that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on the earth." And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, the herb that yields seed according to its kind, and the tree that yields fruit, whose seed is in itself according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning were the third day. Then God said, "Let there be light in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons, and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth." And it was so. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. God set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning were the 4th day. Then God said, "Let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the face of the firmament of the heavens."
Finish out the chapter, anybody?
So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that scurries and swarms in the water, and every sort of bird, each producing offspring of the same kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply. Let the fish fill the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth." And evening passed and morning came, marking the 5th day. Then God said, "Let the earth produce every sort of animal, each producing offspring of the same kind, livestock, small animals that scurry along the ground, and wild animals." And that is what happened. God made all sorts of wild animals, livestock, and small animals, each able to produce offspring of the same kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make human beings in our image, to be like us. They will reign over the fish in the sea, the birds of the sky, the livestock, all the wild animals on the earth, and all the small animals that scurry along the ground." So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God he created them, male and female he created them. Then God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and govern it, reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and all the animals that scurry along the ground." Then God said, "Look, I have given you every seed-bearing plant throughout the earth, and all the fruit trees for your food. And I have given every green plant as food for all the wild animals, the birds in the sky, and the small animals that scurry along the ground, everything that has life." And that is what happened. Then God looked over all he had made, and saw that it was very good. And the evening passed, and the morning came, marking the 6th day.
Okay. We mentioned, what does beginning mean to everybody? And I think I heard starting point and 2, 3 others, right? What were some of the things, or will be some of the things that will have a beginning in Genesis?
Life.
Life of every sort, isn't it? Man, beast, plants, everything. Okay?
Darkness and light.
Darkness and light. Well, darkness was already there. said the darkness was over the face of the waters. So it's just darkness. And then all of a sudden when he said, let there be light. So what else?
The land. Land.
Land, yeah, the earth. Yeah. You know, everything that's mentioned, obviously. Well, what are some things that aren't mentioned in the first 3 chapters of Genesis that happen to be the first thing ever? And really the first 5 or 6, 7 chapters of Genesis, but we can say first flower, first vegetable, you know, we know that.
First man.
First man, which had to be life. Within that first man, what happened with the first man? First man and first woman, there was a marriage. Does the Bible say that there's a marriage in Genesis? No. But it says, let the man have his wife. And I'm paraphrasing that. We'll get to that in the latter part of 2. But there's a marriage, and God talks about that marriage all the way into the New Testament in Mark 10, 5 and 6, and Matthew 19, 9, and Matthew 5, 32, and so on and so forth. Various places refer back to Genesis, in the beginning. So we have the first marriage. Then what would that create? The first family, first home, right? You got, you know, he even says, what does he say? Well, again, the problem is, I don't want to go too far ahead, but I'm just asking right now, we'll be talking about each and every one of these. But that family is a family unit, if you will. Does anybody know how to keep this thing from going off right quick? But anyway, what else? First.
The first love of God. The whole chapters, he creates these things and he says they are good, and he creates the garden for man to prosper.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We had man and wife, husband and wife, marriage, even though it doesn't say marriage, the home, even though it doesn't say home, sin, we know that. Of course, you had to have a birth. No, actually sin. Then later on, we're going to have a birth. Then we're going to have
Murder.
death. And how was that death brought about? Yeah, but somebody else.
Brothers.
Murder, first murder. And that's going to be debatable. We're going to talk about, when we talk about the serpent, whether Cain was the first murderer or whether the serpent was the first murderer. You think about that. And again, it's hard for me to stay in chapter 1 because there's so much to talk about. It kind of overlaps. Then in the flood, what would be the first? Rain and the first flood. Now there was a lot of water because it says face of the waters. There was water everywhere. That's all it was water. And then we're going to see how all these things came about. I had one video. There was a lot of videos that I was going to show, but some of them were so far-fetched that I just didn't want you to get the wrong impression or whatever. But there was a couple that were pretty good. I mean, they really were spot on. I should have tried to work it out to show them, but I didn't. But anyway, those are the first things. Can you think of some other things? First anything. The beginning of anything that happened in Genesis.
Did you say time? Meaning of time?
Good time. Good point, because there is no time in terms of how infinity or eternity is, but from creation point, there's time, right? Now, I'll interject this at this moment. If you believe in evolution, then that time is an extended amount of time, right? And again, please, if you're not comfortable in asking it, and maybe if everybody believes it, we don't even talk about that, but if you do believe that and you're not comfortable in talking about it in front of everybody, please talk to me about it, because I really want to know. I've been studying, like I say, both sides. I would love to hear your side if you feel like that. And if you want to bring it up in class, we certainly will discuss it. I will not skim over anything. I will do my best to talk about it to the best of my ability. What does the word create mean?
To make.
I thought so. Most people do. But there is a difference between create and make.
The design,
Create goes back to using the word nothing. God created things out of nothing.
He manifested.
That, I guess. You're using big words now. He created out of nothing to make. Now, what if are any of y'all artists? I know Sean was here last year. Somebody will say, "Oh, he's created a masterpiece, hasn't he?" Well, it might, in essence, I mean that's in our way of thinking, but he didn't create a masterpiece out of nothing, did he? He took somebody's ink, put it on somebody's paper, and things like that. The word make goes hand in hand with making something rather than creating something. Now, I know we got at least one teacher in here, maybe more, but tell me if this doesn't make sense in terms of creating and make, but everything that I've ever read, that's how creation is. It's something out of nothing. Even though we don't use it that way. We use more in the line of making, but that's kind of what it is. Thoughts on all that? Anytime you got any thoughts at all, just please don't hesitate to say anything. I'd like to read Psalm 19, 1 through 3. Psalm 19, 1 through 3. And this may have been better to go back with the previous parts, but it works here too.
The heavens declare the glory of God, the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard.
Now, as we've already seen, different people use different versions, and there might be some words that aren't in some versions. What about John chapter 17? John 17, verse 5 and verse 24.
verse 5 says, "And now, O Father, glorify me together with yourself, with the glory which I had with you before the world was."
24.
24. And verse 24 says, "Father, I desire that they also whom you gave me may be with me where I am, that they may behold my glory, which you have given me, for you loved me before the foundation of the world."
Now here's two verses that I had never really studied hard to really remember it saying, I had you with you before the world was. God the Son is saying, I really loved it when I was here before the world was. Now, we might say, well, wow, what do you mean there? But it's like some children don't want to go down there tonight, did they probably? They'd rather be with their parent or somebody watching them. And I'm not saying that, but at some point in time in the future, obviously, and we can say it's probably about 4,500 years if you want, God the Son was going to leave his Father and come down to the earth as Jesus. So these verses, I think he's talking about that, but I could be wrong. You got any thoughts on John 17, 5 and 24?
Well, it mentions at the beginning, John, that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So, in the beginning, it sort of hints that maybe Jesus and God were part of that creation process because he spoke things, he manifested it into being from nothing, spoken into it.
Yeah. And where was the Spirit during this? What does Genesis 1, 2 say? And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. All three were there. They've always been there. But we read of them actually doing something at creation. And then Titus 1, 1 and 2. Titus 1, 1 and 2.
Paul, a bondservant of God and an apostle of Jesus Christ, according to the faith of God's elect, and the acknowledgement of the truth which accords with godliness, in hope of eternal life, which God, who cannot lie, promised before time began.
Before time began is eternity. That's when the three were together. So let's go back now. Those are all the verses that I have as of right now. Let's start looking at some of the individual verses. What does it mean to be without form? Now what does most versions say? Mine says the earth was without form and void. What does most versions say something similar to that? What does that mean?
Void means empty.
Empty. Without form means what?
No shade.
No shape. Now, a lot of commentaries are different on this, and some of those videos that I watched are different on this, but I will just throw out a couple things. Most seem to think it was just a mass, but it was all solid. Others seem to think that it was still called Earth, but if you looked, and for anybody that's in astronomy or anything like that, you got all these meteorites or whatever that's floating around. Others say it was just all of that, kind of in one area, if you will, then it came together. I like the idea of just one mass, but just not having any form to it. What do y'all think?
Well, in 7 says, thus God made me firmament.
Well, that's going to be above the earth. That's going to, we're talking now, he's putting together the heavens and the earth. The actual earth that we're living on right now, that we're walking, that y'all walked in the door in, that's our earth. And the question is, was it kind of together, or was it just floating around and then he put it together? And you cannot answer this. I don't think you're going to know. Whatever your answer is, just as good as the next answer. Because it doesn't say, does it? But it seems to be that I would just think it's there in some mass, just not in any form. And we're certainly going to see it didn't have the highest of mountains and the lowest of valleys. We'll be reading other verses on that.
But it did have water.
It did have water. Water was over everywhere. I mean, and it's hard for us to picture that because we can't picture it, can we? We can't go there because it was just all water. I think I wrote an article recently where down toward the bottom of that article, I put in there, the earth is made up of about 70% of water. But yet, on any given day, do you see any water? Now, I'm not talking about the drinking water. I'm talking about creeks, rivers, oceans, lakes and oceans. Most of us don't see that unless we go, and I'm not talking about even somebody at the beach, they may see the ocean every single day, but for the most part, most people do not see a big creek, ocean, whatever, on a daily basis. But yet the world is covered, 70% or so, they tell us, I don't know how they know that, but by water. It's really amazing. But here it was all covered by water. Hovering over the face of the waters was the Spirit of God. Now when he says created the heavens, what does that mean? What's our goal? Ultimately, when we die, where do we want to go? Heaven. Well, which heaven is it? It says heavens.
Like galaxy, the outer space, maybe all that.
One of the heavens is where God resides.
Yeah.
And then another is described as having the birds in it.
Paul talks about when he became a Christian, for about 3 years he was with the Lord in the third heavens, it says. Now that means there's got to be more than likely it's 2 and 1, right? To have a third, you're going to generally have a 1 and 2. Everything that I studied, and again, these videos would have done a great job of showing this part. And I don't want to, Carol, I don't want to get to the firmament quite yet, but probably not to kind of talk about it. The firmament is, a lot of people will talk about it as being a dome. You have up so far, and then what we see is the sky, is the firmament. And some versions even say sky, don't it? I think, maybe. But some versions don't say heaven there when it says, number 8, and God called the firmament heaven. Most versions don't say that. And it's capitalized. If you notice, that one is capitalized. Oh, the other heavens aren't even capitalized. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. But the heavens, from what I can gather, what I can study, and when you read about later on here, we're going to read about the stars, and not in this particular chapter, but other talks about the moon. The firmament part is the first part. And how high can a plane fly? I mean, what's the altitude of a plane?
30,000 feet.
About 40,000 is the best planes. And maybe they got, obviously, supersonic planes might even go higher than that. But I'm talking about if you wanted to fly in an airplane, you're going to go about 35,000 feet. That's about as far as what we would call the firmament, if you will. Above that is those stars and galaxies and planets, and no longer a planet called Pluto, but that's where Pluto is. That's that second heaven. Now it doesn't say, or at least I can't find it, where it actually says that's the second heaven. But again, if the first is what we see, the sky part, and we certainly don't go where God is, the second one would have to be that part. Or at least I think so. What's your thoughts? It just makes sense, doesn't it? So God created these things. And then God said, let there be light. What kind of light? We've said this verse for years. Let there be light, and there was light. What kind of light? How bright was it? Where did it come from?
Sunlight.
No, sun wasn't created yet. S-O-N?
That's not what I was.
Oh.
Maybe I would take that.
What kind of light was it?
Like daytime?
That's the best answer I've heard. The only answer I've heard so far. I'm just kidding. Even on the cloudiest of days, it's daylight, isn't it? But the darkest of night is dark. When it said, does it even say it was dark? Yeah, the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. It was dark everywhere. Only God could see whatever God sees. But then all of a sudden he says, let there be light. Some people will say it's the light of the sun, S-O-N. Other people will say it's just light. It's just like you said, it's daylight. I mean, what do you think?
Well, it says in this passage that God called the light day, so in verse 5.
Yeah, that's great. Great point. Great catch there. So it was dark, but he didn't call it night, did he?
Yeah,
God,
he said in the darkness
well,
he called night.
prior to this, I mean,
Okay.
he just said darkness. But yeah, verse 5, that's great. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. But yet, when we think of day, we think of sun, don't we? But it's not, it's not the same light. I don't know that there's an answer for that, exactly what that light is. It's just, like you said, it's just daylight. It's day. But at least I can't figure out, and no commentary that I've read seems to give an answer to this.
Well, it says in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The heaven and the earth. So maybe he had already created it.
Created the light?
Yeah, the sun.
No, he doesn't until later.
Oh, he doesn't until
Yeah,
later.
no. The moon and the stars and the sun have not been created yet. But there is light. But we don't know whether that's just light. And again, I guess my question is, what light is that? I don't know that we can answer that. It's just light, isn't it? And none of this really matters, does it? I mean, ultimately, we can go on, I could quick skip through all this. Does it really make a difference? It's just there. The light was there because God said it. And God created it just by speaking. Now what does he say at the latter part of 5? So the evening and the morning were the first day. Again, I don't want to get down the road of evolution and all that too much, but I do think I need to talk a little bit about it. What do you think a day is? How long is a day?
24 hours.
Everybody that's ever been born has been taught or seen a clock or whatever that there's 24 hours in a day. Except, was it Elijah that prayed to God to have a day extended or something? But anyway, normal day, night, right? It says here, evening and morning were the first day. This is where, and again, please tell me later on or whatever, if you believe in evolution, you're going to believe that these days were millions of years. And there's all kinds of reasons they believe that. But I just can't see it. My problem is if you believe that these days are long periods of time. And they base that on, in the New Testament, when it says, the Lord, 1,000 days is a year, and a year is 1,000 days. But he doesn't apply that anywhere else. If you apply it to Genesis chapter, the 6 days of creation, then you have to apply it, or in my opinion, you have to apply to everything else that there's a day with. Where do you stop? And why would you stop? It just doesn't make sense that that he would stop on day 6, calling it 1,000 years or 1,000,000 years or whatever, then all of a sudden pick up from that point on with normal days, normal 24-hour days.
The New Testament talks about the first day of the week. So we carried out on the first day of the week, and then how long does that continue, you know?
Yeah, I mean, where do you stop? I mean, if you go through Genesis, and we'll get there a little bit, but I'm not going to probably go down through the genealogies, but they all, every single one except for, I shouldn't say every single one, most of the genealogies of Adam and most of the genealogies of Noah showed having a specific day when they died, how old they were. Where in the world would it, you know, it seemed like it would, now again, I know we're talking about Adam in creation, but if Adam was created and then if there was 1,000,000 years from day 1, 2, 3, 4, from day 6 to day 7, God would have to wait 1,000,000 years just to wait for him to rest. Does that make sense? Because from day 6, you know, he stopped. On day 7, he said, you know, we're going to rest, and we'll read about all that. But anyway, it's hard for me to understand that. But I get how people might think that because it's various things. In some versions, when it talks about that word was, in verse 2, that word was on the face of the deep, that he had already created some things and all this stuff. So, but anyway, does anybody want to say anything at all about evolution in that sense, comparing it to day 1 being a night and a day? Okay, time's quickly going by. I swear I can't hardly believe this. God saw the light and it was good. God divided the light from the darkness. And again, we you know, if we want to call it day, that's day. But we, as far as we can see, is daylight. Then it does get dark. When you see pictures of them going to the moon, if you watch movies or whatever, you know, at some point in time outside of that firmament, it gets dark. Now, the movies, if you watch them, they're going to show, you know, everything being illuminated. But it's, unless they've got lights on those Apollo spacecrafts, then it's not going to be that way. It's going to be dark. But the firmament, now some versions don't say firmament. Does anybody have a version that does not say firmament? I didn't write it down where it said. But, does it make sense about the dome part? What we see is the sky. If we and I I'm not too good at this kind of stuff here. Let me pull up one thing right quick here. If anybody knows how to use these tablets, maybe for tomorrow night, you can show me how to have two open at the same time. I can do it with a computer, but I don't know how to do it with this tablet. Yeah, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. There's some articles that would talk about this to a certain extent, but we're running behind. God's made the firmament, if we want to call it a dome or whatever, and divided the waters which were under the firmament, which would be the waters that have always been. All this water has always been. So he divides this. He takes this sky, firmament, whatever you want to call it, and there's waters above, but there's also waters in the clouds, and then there's now waters below, and what he's going to do with that. And it was so, and God called the firmament heaven, and I don't have an answer as to why he calls it heaven. Is everybody's version capitalized on that heaven? Because I don't have an answer for that. I don't know why it's capitalized. Because it's not heaven like, if you wanted to capitalize heaven where God is, you could, but there's no other verse that says heaven with an H, capitalized H, to my knowledge now. And this is the only one, and so I don't know the answer to that. But so the evening and the morning were the second day. So we have heavens, 1, 2, 3, a firmament, and the waters dividing firmament dividing the waters from the water, night and day, 2 days now, seem to be 24 hours. And God called the firmament heaven, and so the evening and morning were the second day. Then God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together in one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. Now, wasn't the earth already dry? Or was it wet? If there was waters everywhere, and we had a mass of dirt, why wouldn't it have been wet? More than likely it was. Not in the way we think about it, but again, because we think anytime water comes in contact with dirt, it's just a mud blob, right? Again, I can't answer these. God has answers to this, but I don't know what they are. But let the waters under the heavens be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear as though it's separate than the previous dry land, if you will. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth. That's what we live on. And the gathering together of the waters he called seas. And he capitalized that one too. And I don't know if maybe he's pointing out to capitalize all the, the heavens, the earth, the seas. Maybe that's what it is. But the seas went into, and one of those videos showed it, all the seas just started going here and there and creating what we know of as oceans and lakes and things. Other than man-made lakes. There's a lot of man-made lakes. But, we're talking about what was created. A created lake or a created ocean. There's nobody created any ocean other than God. Any questions down through 10? Any comments? Thank you so much for all your comments so far. Any questions? Now, she's going to the restroom, but I wonder if I answered Carol's question about the firmament. I hope so. But anyway, verse 11, then God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on the earth, and so it was so. That's where we talked about those, the first fruit. I wonder if it was Adam or Eve who ate the first, not apple, peach, or grape, or whatever. I wonder, did they make hay like everybody's cutting hay right now? Did they do anything just like we do? Or was it different? Everything that grew then grows now the same way. and we've used it for church examples in terms of the seed of Christ. If we sow that seed, it will make Christians and Christians only. Here, if something that he said, was, if an apple tree is growing and the apple falls from the tree, it's going to grow an apple. If the peach tree is growing and the seed falls from the peach tree, it is going to be a peach. And we're already doing it different again this year. That second bell at 10 after didn't ring, so I don't know. Anyway, didn't get as far as I'd hoped tonight, but I also said I didn't think, didn't have a particular plan. I do hope you'll come back tomorrow. I hope that you'll come back all week. We will be discussing all of this as we go on, and ever how far we get to it. Any final thoughts, comments on anything? Since it's just that one class, we can go about 4 more minutes. But I do believe we see, even in the mornings and so on and so forth, then let the lights be in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons, for days and years. Does anybody ever go by the signs to plant your gardens? Now, some people do. Several people raising their hand, and some people don't. Seems like the tomato grows just as good without the sign or the season, but then sometimes it does. So, but I think that's what this is talking about. And there's some verses in the Bible that seem to indicate some things like that. But it is for signs and seasons. And our seasons are winter, spring, summer, and fall. That's what it's talking about there. The earth rotates and so on and so forth, and that's how it works. And but anyway, we'll stop there and pick it up right around that verse and go as far as we can go tomorrow night. Thank you very much for your attention, and tomorrow. Casey, I guess we need to hand out these things. I'll give it some adults first here, and then we'll see. Adults? Young adults?